Hello, this is Benjamin Franklin. I thank you for this opportunity to speak to you all once again. This what transpires in your country, the United States of America, and in my country too, is most puzzling to many of you. Many of you are used to business as usual, things as they are. You are used to politicians behaving and speaking in certain ways that have become predictable to your knowledge, to your memory, in the time of your lifespan. Now you find politicians who speak differently, who think differently. You are finding those who speak what's on their mind, seeming to not care what anyone thinks of it. You have two candidates at this time who do this. One is quite victorious in his party. The other is not as victorious. He is in second place at this time. And I wish to mark the date of June 7, 2016 as when this is spoken. So what do you do with these new politicians who seem to operate in a different way? They operate in a way that is most puzzling. Many appreciate these ones for their candor, especially those who agree with them. Others who do not agree with them still appreciate the candor. However, they cannot suffer the messages. They feel the messages by one or the other is not the correct message for them. There is another candidate who is within the mold. Indeed, one who has been a candidate many times. One who is quite polished in the art of politics and the art of diplomacy. One who measures her words carefully. One who filters her thoughts even more carefully. She indeed focuses on who is to hear her message and crafts it carefully for that person or for that group. So what do you do as citizens, as voters, with this irregularity? What do you do with your anxiety over the situation that for many of you, neither of these candidates are acceptable? The ones who speak their mind remind you that many times you settle for their lesser of two evils when you vote. As we said in our day, with one hand we hold our nose, and with the other hand we cast the ballot. So what is this difficulty you have reconciling the body politic with your needs and desires as a citizen, as an American? Indeed, your desires are many. You have the expectation of freedom, how you shall define it, but to live your life the way you desire. You're willing to give up a minimum of liberties for the good of the democracy, realizing that license to do whatever you want is not a license at all. It is anarchy. So there are concessions that are made to what's called the good of the public or the public good, to limit your freedom and opportunity in return for civil order, in return for the rule of law, in return for laws and governance that represent the sum total of the desires of the voting population. Now these desires are many. These desires that you have for your life, for your well-being, for you and your family, are categorized, collected, collectivized by your political parties and your candidates to take your desires and create solutions for them. Now, indeed, this is a difficult job that candidates and political parties have, because there are always many, many more desires than there are categories with which to fit them into. You also have the challenge by the parties and by the candidates of making themselves distinctive. So they must distinguish themselves from the others. Candidates in the same party distinguish themselves from each other. Those of different parties draw much greater distinctions and present these to you as well. So you are left with a menu of what we can call canned solutions. Solutions that are cooked up, put together in a stew that is both logical, practical, and palatable. The stew, then, is put into cans. All these cans have the same label. One label can say Democrat. The other label can say Republican. So these different cans of stew are made available to you for your selection and your dining pleasure for the remainder of the 2-year, 4-year, or 6-year term that the office holds. You know what is in these cans. Those of you who pay attention know what's in them. They know how they're created, the ingredients that go into them, the politicians and operatives who put them together, the cooks, and then you also know how the food itself was cooked before it was put in the can. Indeed, there are those who influence the process who are not citizens, who as entities are not voters. These entities are comprised of voters, but these entities have their own interests. These entities are associations, groups of people, political parties themselves, as well as business concerns, corporations. The group of voters who form a corporation many times will hold their nose as they enter the doors of their workplace, realizing that a group of people come together and create a concern or a company that produces a good or service in and of itself has its own interests. It desires to make money, desires to be free to create the kind of enterprise that it desires to create, to present the products or services it does to its customers in the way that it sees fit. Again, there are laws and limitations that regulate these as well for the public good and the public safety. However, how do these organizations, the same can be spoken of religious organizations, again, groups of people, groups of citizens, band together to form an organization that acts in their behalf, an organization that begins to take upon itself its own needs and wants. A church or religion can be this. The larger the one, the more the wants it has, the more influence it can have, both over those who govern, over those who cook the cans of stew, and to those of its membership who are voters as well. The same can be said for other organizations. Intellectual organizations, which you call think tanks, which influence the process based upon not religious ideology, but political ideology. The same can be said for labor unions, collectives of workers who band together and decide what ingredients in the stew will best suit their interests. So there you have it. Cans of stew for your voting pleasure. At this time, you have 3 cans of stew. Many of you wonder how long it will take for there to become 2 cans of stew. Many of you wonder if the 1 can of stew that is not quite cooked yet, the lid is not on, although it should be, but the contents, the ingredients, are still in the air. They are still highly questionable. This one who purports to represent the party actually represents very few, but has learned how to appeal in the electoral system that exists, leaving those who are used to managing things without power. This has indeed happened to both of your parties. Many of you use the expression in your culture, out of the box. Perhaps now we can use the expression out of the can. So what do you do as voters? These opportunities that are offered by cans that are not yet closed and cooked, and some cans that are. How do you decide what you want to be in there? Do you make assessments and judgments of the characters of those who run for office? Do you find yourself believing what you want to hear? Do you find all of the media and news sources now, good, bad, all of generally mediocre quality and lower in my opinion? Do you find this information helpful? Or do you find you have to dig further to find information that is helpful for you? Now you have the internet, and there are just as many who will complain about not only the news stories, but those originating them. All who wish to have influence have many ways of discrediting those who they disagree with or who disagree with them. So do you believe what those who say about themselves? Or do you believe those who wish to discredit them? Yes, you can look at the motives of either of these that speak. Yet those are often well hidden as well. So what do you do with this confusion? Do you believe the scandal that is reported of each candidate? Do you believe what the candidates choose not to say, yet their followers do? Yes, notice how this works. This is not new. There are many surrogate speakers of the message. It is not an easy task you have in front of you. I wish to also speak to those of you who are concerned of the future of the Republic. How long can this invention, this experiment in democracy, last? It is the oldest surviving democracy in its form. Is that good or bad? Does its resilience speak to the wisdom of its creators? Or is it time for it to end, to be replaced by something else? The stakes are high here. Many of you who perceive that your whole system seems to be disintegrating before your eyes are not far from the truth. Perhaps your government has outlived your civilization. Even though your system, your constitution, has the opportunity to be amended, and indeed has been many times. But what if that is coming to a point of ending? Is it still a sacred document? Is the idea of democracy still a sacred idea? Is that shining city on the hill, that shining beacon of freedom that have served so many who have come to its shores, still work? Does it still exist in the minds of those who lead it and those who partake of it? These are all somewhat disturbing questions, are they not? Yet they are questions that need to be answered in your own minds. This is the reality of what occurs. Are you comfortable with this new reality? Are you comfortable with the expanded freedoms of expression, communication, and analysis and influence that the internet provides? Will the internet destroy your system? It is obvious your system will not destroy the internet. Can this political system, this constitution, be changed and amended to make allowances for the internet, to make allowances for the true free expression of ideas? In my time, those who had the printing presses spread the ideas. Do not think at any time we were selective of the ideas we spread. Indeed, the two-party system that we had in my time had its same correlations in the media of our time. So where's the answer for this? All I can tell you is, as in all cases, the answer is within each one of you. What is acceptable for you? Do you want the anarchy that comes with this free expression? Are you up for the self-discipline that is required, both as individuals and as society, to maintain a civil society in the face of what is new, of what emerges? Are you comfortable with candidates that defy the bounds of the party? Or do you prefer that? Should you maybe abandon the party system and find another way for legislatures, senates, houses of representatives to come to consensus? There are many questions. I have perhaps given you a few more, or in some cases, given you permission from the founding father, Benjamin Franklin, to think what you have been thinking. To say, yes, this is true what he has said. So what do you do now? How do you define the candidate of the future? Or perhaps the question is, how do you allow the candidate of the future? We will see as your process unfolds. We will see what your parties do in the coming months of conventions. There are many surprises yet ahead. Within great change is indeed great opportunity. The smart ones are those who seize it. The smart ones are those who see the times of change equal times of choice. Many see change as a frightening thing, and in their fear descend into a place of personal uncertainty, personal disorder, personal anarchy. Then there are others who recognize the opportunity in change. Some of those will find a way to consolidate their power and take advantage of it. This happens many times. There are those who will bring fear to the populace and play upon those fears to consolidate their own power. Then there are those who realize that these times of great change are times to create great change, to within the disorder, within the chaos, to work with others, and to find a political system that works even better, that works in the interests of all. And then there are those who merely hope, as many do, that they can just hold this together to keep it from falling apart more, to restore sanity where there once was some, who use their proven abilities of managing and governing, while not necessarily clear, while not necessarily without fault, still very effective. So where is your sense of fear in all this? Fear of individuals, of parties, of ideas? Where is your sense of adventure? Where is your sense of unlimited potential, of transformative thought, and the opportunities now presented to implement that? Where are you on these scales? And how much are you willing to influence your fellow travelers of what should be done? As I've said, there is much change ahead in the balance. What you perceive to be now have good possibilities of not being the same choices in the future. I leave you with these thoughts at this time, and will return in approximately 2 weeks' time with a new message, because there will be more to digest and process within this amount of time. So I leave you now, my beloved friends. I am Benjamin Franklin. Good day.